Monday, June 22nd, 2015. It's 8 o'clock on the East Coast, and we're reporting live from the studios of PRN Radio Network. That's the exclusive home of the Watchmen of America program. I'm Joanne Moretti, and my great co-host Scott Ferrarello is here with me, too, and we appreciate you tuning in. Our chat rooms, both at Blog Talk Radio and right here at PRN Radio Network, are open for you. A few of our awesome colleagues, Lynn, AstroTurf, and Famous Anna, are in the chats putting all the links, articles, sources, and documents in there, so you have them available to you right there at your fingertips. And thank you very much for that nice courtesy, my friends. Our colleagues are more than just people in a chat room. They're the best researchers, journalists, and analysts I've ever met. Plus, I see that Lynn is having some weather issues, so if she's got to go, Lynn, just go, all right? Just keep us informed if you have any tornadoes and stuff up there. All right, anyhow, please say hi to each other when you get into the chats. You may run into quite a few of our colleagues over there, as a matter of fact. Today, we have so much news to share with you. We got a whole bunch of analysis and other important facts. And I just want to, let you know that before we begin, though, I have to first do a short disclaimer. And that just lets everybody else know that whatever is said on this show is my responsibility and not that of our gracious hosts and sponsors. The disclaimer goes like this. The comments made by hosts and or guest hosts or phone callers of the PRN Radio Network do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints, ideology, beliefs, or anything else of members of the Watchmen of America program or the Patriot Resistance website, either in past, present, or future broadcasts. Also, this show is probably rated around PG-13, and we don't really hardcore cuss or anything like that. But some information might be over the kids' heads, and you know your own kids, so you're capable enough to decide their maturity level. All right, now that that's out of the way, let me say hello to Watchmen. Hey, Watchmen. Now that we've got all that out of the way, let me open up Scott's microphone, give him a proper introduction, and then we'll move on and get this show started. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Scott Ferrarello. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Joanne, how you doing?
I am doing okay, I guess. I'm a little freaked out about everything that's been going on, and we're going to bring a lot of that up tonight. I have about a 4-inch stack in front of me of everything that I want to share with our listeners tonight. How was your weekend? Anything you want to bring up before we begin?
Go for it.
Go for it? Well, I hope you had a wonderful weekend.
Right on in.
Back to work now. Jump in, both feet, head first. Here we go. There's a bottled water recall. That's in New York, actually. Niagara Bottling Company is voluntarily recalling all of its spring water due to concerns over possible E. coli contamination. E. coli bacteria were found in the water supply on June 10th. That's this year. And that bacteria can make you sick. Let me talk about this spring water. Spring water doesn't usually have E. coli bacteria in it. But if it does, aren't these bottling companies using like a reverse osmosis? And then it says it's voluntarily recalling it because there were concerns about the water supply. So what is this water supply? Are they using tap water and then filling bottles and telling you it's spring water? Or
of course.
Up in Niagara, is the whole municipal water supply, is it all spring water? Now, I know they want you to use tap water. I've seen things all over the place. You don't need bottled water, and you do need the tap water. And bottled water, spring water, doesn't have the fluoride in it, which isn't a bad thing, by the way, because it makes people crazy. But, is this a way to get you to drink tap water? Why would they voluntarily recall them? And they never said that they found any in the bottled water itself. But
it says it's because they're trying to create an artificial shortage of water. I mean, California is proof of that.
Yeah, well, what are they going to do with all this water? Are they going to throw it out? They're going to boil it? They're going to
probably sell it to the Chinese,
Well, they don't need
sell all
it.
the good stuff to the Chinese. Don't matter.
Yeah, well,
they'll give it to somebody.
They don't need it.
As long as we don't get it.
They have access to all the water in the Great Lakes. We have a contract with China. I know that you have all heard about the mass shooting that happened in South Carolina. I got to tell you, folks, I am not buying a word of it. The only thing that fits is that this fits nicely into the agenda. For the last 7 years, we've been hearing about race and gender and guns. Well, this has two of the three: race and guns, race and guns, race and guns, and then throw gender in there. I've had a steady diet of it. Two people went to Charleston to start trouble. Allegedly, that kid, Dylan, and, of course, D-Ray, he's down there. Al Sharpton's threatening to go, but guess who else is going to be there now? All those wonderful people in Charlotte didn't take the bait. Instead of fighting with each other and destroying things and burning things down, they all got together. The white people, blacks, Asians, Hispanics, everybody. They all got together and they prayed. And they've been praying for days and days and days. They're not fighting. So we can't have that. We have to now have this Confederate flag BS going on. Let me tell you something. The Confederate flag, and I'm not from the South, so I don't really have the attachment to it. However, I do believe that it's a piece of history. You don't want to fly it, don't fly it. But don't let people go there and destroy monuments and, write Black Lives Matter and spray paint. Obviously, that's the only damn thing that does matter lately, because everything else isn't important. Burning down cities, burning down businesses, looting, robbing, defacing monuments. Give it a rest, folks. You want the flag down, take the flag down. Talk about it, do whatever you got to do. But I'm so tired of this bullying. I can't take it anymore. All right? Everybody's life matters.
You would think, you'd think they'd do that to the gay flag or maybe the Mexican flag. No, of course not. You know why?
Can you imagine?
Because it's all about destroying our traditions and the very fabric of what this country was built on.
Yeah. Well, there were a lot of brave people who fought under that Confederate flag. And I got something else to tell you in case anybody needs a news flash. There were slaves in the North, too. When we landed at Plymouth Rock, we had little colonies up there and stuff. And as we got bigger and we decided to have this revolution, it started in the North. All right, people migrated south. So did you think it was just the people in Charleston who had slaves? Plus, less than 2% of black people were slaves. Mostly the slaves were Irish, Italian, and Chinese, if you really want a history book. But we're not even going to get into that. Let's just talk about the black people. Okay, there were black slaves in the colonial days. There were black slaves, up until slavery was abolished. So are you going to burn the flag of Massachusetts or the Virginia flag or Pennsylvania? How about Connecticut? Want to burn all those flags? Let's do it. Let's get the matches and a gallon of gas. We'll hook it up. I'm tired of it. And, what if I stood here and said, okay, well, that rainbow flag that Scott just talked about, that's offensive. Okay, what if we demanded that? What if, I don't give a damn about the flag, so don't get this wrong. I'm being sarcastic. But what if we said, okay, well, that rainbow represents a threat to traditional Americans and religious people, so I think we should ban it. I don't want to see a rainbow flag anywhere. How about if I said, okay, let's ban the Mexican flag in the United States, except for on Cinco de Mayo. And then on Cinco de Mayo, you require them to get a permit to fly their flag. Everybody be screaming out of their mind about the First Amendment. Like I said, you want to take the flag down, you take the flag down, but that should be a decision that's reached by the municipalities, if you ask me. All right? Because somebody adopted the flag, all of a sudden it was offensive. Well, then why'd you adopt it? Why did you make that a target? There's so many other things you could have made a target. And now they're defacing monuments because it's got white people on them. Well, I'm sorry. I got a fact, too. White people are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. Blacks aren't going anywhere. Asians aren't going anywhere. Hispanics aren't going anywhere. Native Americans either. None of you got to choose. Even that chick, Dollarzel. She didn't get to choose either. She's a con artist and a liar. All right? So, last I heard, none of us got to choose. So why are we fighting about this?
Because it's a non-story, and they got to keep as many non-stories in the news cycle, so they're not talking about what's really important. I mean, first it's Bruce Jenner, and then as soon as that died down, they rolled out this Rachel whacknut, and then after she died down, now it's the Confederate flag, and next week it's going to be something else equally as stupid.
You
But,
know
you
what
know,
it's going to
just
be
like,
next week? I already saw it. The atheists are flipping out about the crosses at Arlington Cemetery. They don't want them there.
Yeah, well.
That ought to go well, huh? Yeah, that's going to go real well.
It will, because, you know, whatever George Soros is putting money behind, that's what goes down in our country, because it's been taken over. And, you know, just like in the beginning of our show with our intro with the John F. Kennedy thing, what's he say? There's no, you know, paraphrasing here. There, you know, makes no sense to save a nation if we don't save our traditions as well, correct?
Right.
And what was the first thing Michelle Obama said in 2009? Well, traditions. Yeah. We gotta make new traditions in America.
Yeah, we got to rewrite our history and make new traditions, and that's exactly what they're doing. Speaking of rewriting history, they want to take Hamilton off the $10 bill. I don't know if anybody knows what importance Hamilton had, but did everybody know that he wrote the Federalist Papers? That he was a founding father? That he was the first Treasury Secretary? Of course he's on the money. He was the first Treasury Secretary. Everybody else is the president. So,
you know,
right,
I don't have a problem with you know, replacing Andrew Jackson with somebody else, because he'd have hated being on Federal Reserve notes. I mean, the guy was the only guy who successfully stopped a central bank from taking hold in this country after they tried to kill him, and he had a surplus for the first time ever. And so, you know, just the fact that he's on, you know, central bank, you know, money notes, yeah, right. He's turning in his grave. But you don't put Margaret Sanger on there instead.
I'll start the fight
myself. Put somebody else, you know, some other president.
Yeah, well, you know, they're saying, well, we got to have a woman on our money. Did they forget the Susan B. Anthony coin or the Sacagawea coin? There were women on there. Now, I got no problem with putting a woman on there. But if we're going to put presidents on our money, don't you think we should wait until we get a female president first before we start changing anything?
And,
you know, if you're insisting on a woman...
I haven't seen Ronald Reagan on money. I mean, don't they wait a while for that to happen? I mean, John F. Kennedy was on his own, you know, silver dollars, but, you know, that was when the silver certificates came out, and, you know, he was actually minting his own money, the Treasury Department. You know, it's ridiculous. You know, maybe they should put Obama on a $3 bill. Yeah,
really. You know, but like I said about this flag, you want to take it down, you take it down, but don't take it down because you're being bullied into it. Take it down because it would be the right thing to do or the calm thing to do. You know, don't just do it because you're being bullied into it. Because what's next? Those crosses at Arlington Cemetery? They're going to knock it down too.
There's no reason to take it down or to get rid of it. I'm a Yankee, and I am totally okay with the Confederate flag. It doesn't threaten me one iota, and it doesn't symbolize anything except a little bit of Southern pride. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, well, you know, but it was adopted as a symbol of oppression, okay? So you don't want the symbol around, fine, but don't do it at a time where there's been a alleged crisis that I'm really not sure that that's real either. But
you can find a symbol of oppression anywhere. What do you think a master bedroom is? What do you think MasterCard is? Where do you think that term master comes from? I mean, let's just change everything. You know, get over
many
it.
Ideas.
This country didn't be so uptight about nothing, but since they are fabricating news now, and they don't want, you know, these crappy Entertainment Tonight type mainstream media news programs talking about anything important. They just got to keep making up stupid stories like this, and they have their politicians, their meat puppets, go along with it like it's a big deal, and they make mountains out of molehills.
Yeah, and then of course they start with gun control. I mean, first of all, before I even get to the gun control, Obama and Biden are going to be going there Friday to Charlotte for the Reverend Clementa Pinckney's funeral. He was one of the 9 victims. He was a state senator. It says that from the Hill, it says that Obama's going to deliver the eulogy. God only knows what this man is going to do. I mean, if you're going to memorialize somebody, try to make it about them. You all know
what
damn
he's
well
gonna
Obama's he's going to make it about him and his agenda.
He's going to get up there, and he's going to promise them that he's going to do something about these darn guns and that horrendous Second Amendment. And that way he can get up there on his podium and say, I made a promise to those families. And, he'll try to drum up a few crocodile tears.
Yeah, well,
they're coming after the Second Amendment, folks.
All
right?
those wonderful all those wonderful people inside that church that night were disarmed. They didn't bring any guns into church. It's uncouth to bring a gun into church. So there was only one gun there, the perps. Maybe if one other, I'm not blaming them for their own death by any means. That would be a sickening thing to do. But, maybe if there was a security guard there or one other person who was armed, it wouldn't have been 9 victims. So, and here they are talking about getting rid of guns. Even the Pope. The Pope came out and blasted guns. He said out of his own mouth, well, people who manufacture weapons or invest in weapons industries are hypocrites if they call themselves Christian, Pope Francis said on Sunday. Francis issued his toughest condemnation to date of the weapons industry at a rally of thousands of young people at the end of the first day of his trip to the Italian city of Turin. If you trust only men, you have lost, he told the young people in a long, rambling talk about war, trust, and politics, after putting aside his prepared address. It makes me think of people, managers, businesses who call themselves Christian, and they manufacture weapons. That leads to a bit of distrust, doesn't it, he said, to a lot of applause. He also criticized those who invest in weapons industries, saying duplicity is the currency of today. They say one thing and do another. How about we stop right there? Because you know who the biggest shareholder of the Italian gun company Moretti is? The Vatican.
The Vatican.
Yep, the Vatican. The Vatican is the number one shareholder in Beretta weapons industry. And you're not a Christian?
Jesuit?
And you're not a Christian? What do you mean you're not a Christian? So a Christian's supposed to just be victims? Now, Italy, if it wasn't for American weapons, the Pope would be speaking German and he'd be broke because every bit of that wealth in that Vatican would be gone. You think it's a couple of hundred gods? His gods are going to stop that? You think those gods could have stopped Hitler? No. It was American weaponry.
It's not even about the truth or anything like that anymore. It's a global government who's telling these meat puppets what to say, and they all say the exact same thing. It's no different than when the White House gives MSNBC, ABC, CBS, and NBC the same talking points. They're all on the same page together, you see. Solidarity.
Yeah, well, this Pope is all about the climate change and the gun control. And I wonder, who is this guy and where's the real Pope? Don't you wait for somebody to die before a new Pope is elected? The last Pope, Benedict, he's still alive. And, if you believe all that conspiracy stuff, this is going to be the last Pope. Well, no wonder. He's reckoning. So,
the Jesuits used to be like the police department for the Vatican, and it was against Catholic law for a Jesuit to be a pope. That's why there hasn't been one yet until now. Why do you think that is? And plus, he's a Marxist and a radical. Yeah. So putting him in charge of the Vatican as the Pope is like having an illegal alien, Muslim sympathizer, as President of the United States. I mean, what a terrible thing that would be.
Don't get me wrong either. I'm not dogging the Catholic Church. I'm a recovering Catholic, but...
I'm not either.
But
you
on
think
the
John
other
Paul
hand,
II would do any of this? I mean, he'd never have come out and did this stuff, said these things in 100 years.
I'm saying keep an eye on this Pope because just something not right. Something is not right about this.
There's something not right about all these world leaders. I don't trust any of them. Not one.
No, we're going to get into that in a minute too, because there's some stuff going down that everybody needs to hear about that you're not going to hear about on mainstream media. Hey, the White House chef was found dead. He'd been missing for a week. His name is Walter Scheib, Scheib. He was a chef. He was 61. He worked for the White House between 1994 and 2005. He was found dead in New Mexico in the mountains. It says he's been missing for over a week, and he was last seen about to embark on a hike solo through the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, according to the Washington Post. Why would you go hiking by yourself? Okay, he was found 1.5 miles from his car. That's not much of a hike. You know, the bridge that we
ride. That's
the bridge. Yeah, he must have known too much because he wasn't wearing hiking boots. If this guy knew anything about hiking, and especially in this weather, and you know it's spring and all the underbrush and stuff, why would you wear sneakers and not hiking shoes or boots?
He must have known where all the cupcakes were buried.
Maybe, but you know he cooked for many heads of state. He cooked for Boris Yeltsin, Princess Diana, Nelson Mandela, Prime Minister Tony Blair. Even had a cookbook. So maybe he knew too much. But, you know, maybe he did go hiking. But 1.5 miles from his car, he didn't make it far. And he didn't have a backpack, and he didn't have on hiking gear. He just decided to go for 1.5 miles walk and drop dead. What happened?
We'll never find out anything about that. That's one of those stories that'll just go away.
Mhm.
Just expect more incidences because they're coming after the Second Amendment. I mean, when you have Karl Rove coming out there and saying, well, the only way to get rid of all the violence is to repeal the Second Amendment, whether he meant it or not, it doesn't matter. Because number one, he's putting it out there like the guns are the problem instead of the parenting or the wacko kid or the psychotropic drugs. And he's putting an idea out there for the Democrats. He's also a mouthpiece for the GOP establishment. And if you think John Boehner or Mitch McConnell will stop you-know-who from repealing the Second Amendment, you know, I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn.
Yeah, well, you know, this Second Amendment thing, we've told you all, you know, the whole time that Obama's been there, that he's coming for the guns. He told you himself. Holder told us. He said he had to brainwash everybody out of their guns, and they're doing it. And I'm going to tell you right now how they did it. The Associated Press posted a picture. In this picture was Ted Cruz. On the wall beside him was a couple of photographs of guns. But this Associated Press photographer lined up a shot that showed this pistol pointed at Cruz's head. First of all, can you imagine if somebody took that photograph and instead of Cruz standing there was any Democrat, not just Obama, but any Democrat was standing there with a gun pointed toward their head? They'd freak out. However, they did it with Ted Cruz, and that also is what Scott just said. It's all propaganda because they want you screaming, oh, yeah, you wouldn't show a picture of a Democrat instead of Cruz there. Yeah, you got a gun pointed at his head. So now they want you screaming against guns. See what I'm getting at?
That's not going to work. And it's not going to work. And,
yeah, well, they want you to be upset that gun...
I think that's what probably the Jade Helm thing is about. It's because they're going to repeal it, and they know that that's one thing this country will not stand for. And the only way they're going to do it is to take them by force, and they're going to have to kill a few million of us.
Jade Helm is coming up. We got some stuff to talk about with that. I got some updates on that. But this pistol, back to the pistol at the head. Everybody knows that was a photograph of a pistol. Cruz was never in any danger. It was just the visual. And they want you to scream about that because they want to turn you against guns. See, so it doesn't matter if it was a Democrat there, the Democrats would all be screaming. But the Democrats always scream.
Turns me against really crappy photographers.
Yeah, that's what it does with me, too. But they want you to say, oh, yeah, you know, you're showing a picture of Ted Cruz with a gun near him, and, you know, that wasn't right, and guns are bad. And then the next thing you know, you've fallen into a trap. You're doing exactly what they want you to do. So
It's not
don't
working.
get caught up in that
It's
trap.
not working. Sorry.
You
And
know,
they don't care. They're going to repeal the Second Amendment before he gets out of office. That is the goal.
oh, that is the goal,
And-
but we can't let them do that.
And none of these losers are going to be able to stop it. And then I see Mark Levin coming out again, crying about getting rid of Boner. Guess what? They tried that 3 times now, and you can
He's
maybe
not
get
going anywhere.
3 senators or congressmen or whatever to vote against him. That's because it's only 3 that aren't bought or blackmailed.
Yeah, well,
So-
Boehner's not going anywhere, and I don't.
Of course.
I don't anticipate him going anywhere. Hey, Jesse Jackson Jr. was released from a halfway house today. All that corruption, the $43,000, and he bought Rolex watches and Bruce Lee memorabilia, and he bought some furs for his girlfriend and some furniture for his kids, all out of his campaign money. So he ended up going to jail. He said that he was crazy. He had post-traumatic stress syndrome from living in Chicago or something. Anyhow, he's got probation, but he's out of the halfway house.
Yeah, and guess what? They were allowing him to collect like $58,000 disability. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah,
Just
definitely.
showing
Plus
boys.
his disability, plus his money from being a congressman.
Right.
Now let's talk about Valerie Jarrett for a second. You know who she is. Everybody knows who Valerie Jarrett is. Well, Denise, you all know who she is too. She's a host tomorrow night on this channel, PRN. She has uncommon knowledge, her and Bob. Well, Denise come up with this article, and so did Judicial Watch. A whole bunch of FBI files. Do you know that not only Valerie Jarrett's father-in-law, Vernon Jarrett, but her mother, her father, and her grandparents were all card-carrying communists? Judicial Watch says, FBI files document communism in Valerie Jarrett's family. FBI files obtained by Judicial Watch reveal that the dad, maternal grandpa, and father-in-law of Obama's trusted senior advisor, Valerie Jarrett, were hardcore communists under investigation by the United States government. And included in this is those FBI files going back to 1950 on all of them. Jarrett's dad, a pathologist and geneticist, Dr. James Bowen, had extensive ties to communist associations and individuals. His lengthy FBI file shows in 1950, Bowman was in communication with a paid Soviet agent named Alfred Stern. He fled to Prague after getting charged with espionage. Bowman was also a member of a communist sympathizing group called the Association of Interns and Medical Students. After his discharge from the Army Medical Corps in 1955, Bowman moved to Iran to work. The FBI records show that, too. According to Bowman's government file, the Association of Interns and Medical Students is an organization that has long been a faithful follower of the Communist Party line and engages in un-American activities. Bowman was born in Washington, D.C., and had deep ties to Chicago. Remember, back to Chicago, where he often collaborated with fellow communists. Judicial Watch also obtained documents on Bowman from the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, showing that the FBI was brought in to investigate him for his membership in a group that follows the Communist Party line. The Jarrett family communist ties also include a business partnership between Jarrett's maternal grandfather, Robert Rochon Taylor, and Stern. That's the Soviet agent who I just told you about. Jarrett's father-in-law, Vernon Jarrett, was also another big-time Chicago communist. And you all know about that. You saw the papers and everything with him and, and the connection with the Axelrod family and all of that. And, of course, Frank Marshall Davis and Thomas Ayers, along with Bill and John Ayers, too. Anyhow, for a period of time, Vernon Jarrett appeared on the FBI's security index and was considered a potential communist saboteur who was to be arrested in the event of a conflict with the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republic, USSR. His FBI file reveals that he was assigned to write propaganda for a Communist Party front group in Chicago that would disseminate the Communist Party line among the middle class. That's the periodical I told you about that he was working on with Frank Marshall Davis. Anyhow, this guy Stern, he went to Mexico, and he was indicted, and he ended up in Prague in exile, but he did some time in Cuba, too. So he was part of East Europe DRP Corporation. I don't know what that is, but Denise told me to make sure I brought that up, too. Now, the Communist Party itself was born in Chicago in 1919 and headquartered there until 1927, when its headquarters and newspaper, the Daily Worker, moved to New York during the 20s. Also, in that other Judicial Watch stuff, there's some files out of Hawaii, too, with Jarrett's family, the grandfather, and Frank Marshall Davis, and the father-in-law. So it goes from Hawaii to Chicago, back to Hawaii, and now into New York. So who vetted Valerie Jarrett? Anybody?
Nobody vetted anybody. Of course not. Well, you know, they knew who she was, and that's exactly what they wanted. You know, how are you going to bring in communists into a fake capitalist country if you don't have it run by commies?
You know, I know you're not a big fan of Glenn Beck, but a while ago, when his show was still on Fox, he said something. He said that there are communists all around Obama, and he's either one of them or he's in deep trouble. Obviously, he's one of them. Unless he's in deep trouble, but he seems to be enjoying this.
Anybody that took 5 minutes and investigated him in 2008 knew this. I mean, Victoria Jackson was the only one on TV that came out and said, the guy's a communist. And they crucified him.
Well, I had a blog.
Saturday Night Live comedian.
I have a blog over at Blogster, and I outed a bunch of the communists over there. And a lot of the stuff that Beck was talking about, people that follow my blog would have known about it weeks and months before Beck even brought it up. As a matter of fact, some of them were sending it to Beck, and that's how I met a lot of his writers before he even, went to the Blaze or anything. He was still at Fox then. But yeah, there's communists all over the place. You remember Van Jones? He's just a red diaper baby. You remember Timothy Geithner, Bob Bauer, the lawyer. He's back in the limelight too, and so is Perkins and Coie, the lawyers over there. They're all communists.
LBJ was a commie,
Mhm.
Come on, they've had him in this government forever, and I was surprised during the times when they were supposedly putting actors like Sean Penn's dad on blacklists in Hollywood. I don't know if that was true or not anymore, because everything they've told us the last 100 years has been a lie.
Yeah, everything's been a lie. We've been lied to. We've been screwed. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. They're just screwing us right in our face and daring us to do anything about it. And then they got all their little flunkies and D-Rays all running around. 2 people went to Charleston to try to destroy that city, and both of them failed. One was that kid, Dylan Root, and the other one was
nobody
D-Ray.
knows really happened. Nobody really knows.
I'm in the same camp as that. I'm not going to guarantee. I'm not even going to go into it for all the reasons that I don't believe a word of it.
I mean, the FBI came out and released a report that said nobody was killed there. Now, anywhere else, or say 30 years ago, that would have been headline news on every channel, the 3 that we had at the time. That would have been the biggest news story. And people still think all this happened. And just like the Boston thing, they always happen during drills. And 5 seconds after it happens, before the alleged bodies get cold, they have Bloomberg or you-know-who or whatever come out and immediately go right after gun control. And, it's racism, Maybe the guy hated Christians. You ever think about that?
Yeah, well, then they come up with this manifesto when we weren't believing the story over at the last Rhodesian or something, and it was this whole diatribe. It looks like it was written by 3 or 4 people, but they try to say it was written by this 21-year-old high school dropout.
Yeah.
The words
with
that
mental
he used.
problems.
Yeah, with mental problems. But the words that he used sound like they came right out of a professor's mouth. Not only that, but you're right about the gun control. It's all about the guns. It's everything, it's the gun's fault, the guns. Well, let me tell you something. Your gun wasn't there. You didn't do it. You weren't there either. So every single time one of these events happen or one of them are pulled off, they're going to blame the people that didn't do it. Every time they come up with gun control, they're telling you how they're going to take guns away from people who would obey those laws. They don't tell you anything about how they're going to take guns away from people who are not going to obey those new laws. We already have laws against shooting people. The perp obviously didn't obey that law. So would he have obeyed a different law? And then all those laws that they wanted to come up with before or after the Sandy Hook and the Gifford thing and the Batman thing and all of that, none of them would have made a difference, not one.
And they know that. They know this. But it doesn't matter because, they create a lie, they create the problem, and they come in and the solution is always some draconian law or stripping away more rights. They've done it in every country. They've done it in Australia. They've done it in the UK. They did it in Canada. And now in the UK, guess what? They have a new thing out. It says, save a life, turn in your knife. Because now that there's no more guns around, people are killing each other with knives, and now they want you to turn in all your knives.
Well, they might want you to turn in your...
It never ends until you are totally helpless and defenseless. And then, if you try to defend your home or yourself from someone attacking you in a home invasion, they arrest the homeowner.
Yeah, and then the Pope calls your names.
Yeah, you're not
for defending yourself. For defending yourself.
Whatever,
look at all these Christians getting slaughtered. What are we supposed to give up the guns? Obama's given them all guns and missiles and SAMs and every other damn thing. But he wants to take away your guns. Why? So we can send more over there? What's he going to do with the guns he takes away from us? Give them to the Muslims?
Well, he's king of the hypocrites. He ships them over to Mexico. He gives them to all these lunatics in Middle Eastern countries, but he doesn't want you to have one. And
he gave them to the Iraqi army that he knew were going to leave all that stuff there for ISIS.
That's what I'm saying.
They must have had a stand-down order. They left everything right in theater and split. They didn't even drive the stuff back to the base. They just left it in the middle of the desert.
You know what? How about setting an example? And how about setting an example? And all these Hollywood people like Stephen King. How about having your bodyguards walk around with slingshots from now on? Because set an example for the rest of us, serfs.
Obama was partying with them all weekend. He was out in Los Angeles at fundraisers with all the Hollywood moguls and screenwriters and actors and all of that. And he was enjoying himself. But did he get them to swear off guns? Nice. I bet you there's a better chance of getting struck by lightning in a cave than to get these Hollywood producers to produce gun-free movies. What are they going to do?
You know what?
Buy Pop-Tarts?
Stephen King.
Stephen
King comes out and talks about gun control. You know what? I think they should do away with authors that glorify murder, psychopaths, and sick slasher books.
Yeah. Mhm.
He makes it cool. Oh, let's be this guy. Let's glorify torture, murder, and everything else.
Well, Holder told us that he was going to brainwash us out of our guns. And every bit of this is to do exactly that. And also, another thing about this kid, Dylan Root. I saw the pictures of him. Every single one, it's the same face. They've changed, they put a hat on him, they put sunglasses on him, they changed his clothes and all of that, but they just put his face. I mean, if this kid doesn't have a stone face, that his expression never changed. The exact same.
His name sounds fake. Your last name is Roof, so you're going to name his middle name Storm, as in Storm Roof? Really?
Not only that, but one of the photographs shows his bedroom. Now, any 21-year-old kid unless he's in the military, that room is not going to be that neat. The bed was made perfect. There was nothing on the dressers. There was nothing on the floor. There was a Confederate flag he was holding, of course, but that's because they're trying to get rid of the Confederate flag. That was the propaganda part. I think every bit of this is propaganda.
It's Adam Lanza Part 2 is all it is.
Even the same haircut, just a little shorter. Yeah, it must have been the haircut that made him crazy, not the guns, right?
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk about Baltimore for a second, because Baltimore Mayor Rawlings was just named president of the Conference of Mayors.
Of course. She has proved her usefulness of being a no-good, scoundrel, lying pig, and that deserves a promotion.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Susan Rice. You know, if you can get up there in front of camera and lie through your fangs, guess what? You get a pay increase and a nice new job title.
Yeah, well, right after the FEMA said that no, she wasn't going to get the $30 million she wanted for riot restoration, she gets named the head of the Conference of Mayors. No, really, I'm not kidding either. Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake is in San Francisco this weekend to be sworn in as a president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, a position she says she'll use to advocate for fixes to Baltimore's entrenched problems. She says the systemic issues that they have in cities are problems we cannot solve alone. Now, remember about Rawlings Blake. She became the first African-American woman to hold the influential leadership position there. But she was also the head of the city council in Baltimore. And she got that position because that other woman, Dixon, moved up to being mayor. Well, Dixon was busted for being corrupt. She was taking money and bribes and all kinds of stuff, fur coats, prepaid cards, things like that. So she got booted out. Sure enough, Rawlings Blake ended up in that position as mayor. That's how they do it. If you're the head of the city council and the mayor's position is open, you get moved in there until the next election. Well, she's also the secretary of the DNC. We've talked about that a number of times. So now she's head of all the mayors. Now I find this article about George Soros, and cities are signing contracts with the feds, too, to ease the path to citizenship. Now, you remember that the judge, Hannon, said that Obama couldn't put any more illegals into the computer until that case was heard. So instead, they have this organization that Soros runs, and he's the one that's signing them all up, and he's putting them in his computer because you can't put them in the other computer. And they're changing the names and all of that and calling them different things, so they're going through Soros's computer to see how many people qualify as refugees and as asylees and whatever else they can get away with. So there is still a database being built on this. And he's in cahoots with the White House for the New American Voters, and that also has to do with the mayors. Obama's White House task force on New Americans is leading the charge, signing up mayors in major cities to further the goal of encouraging recent immigrants and refugees to go through the process of becoming citizens. It says the mayors of New York and Boston have become the latest to join Obama's diversity program. They became the 5th and 6th U.S. cities to hop on board Obama's welcoming parade for hundreds of thousands of immigrants and refugees who entered the country, some legally, some illegally, but haven't yet pursued citizenship. So these people who have entered the country haven't yet pursued citizenship. Do they even want to become Americans? Is he forcing it on them?
No.
Unbelievable.
You know what this is to do? It's all to get everybody as mad as they possibly can be, because they feed on it. And the way to do that is just to make everything unfair, everything upside down and lopsided, so everybody is just in a constant state of misery, anxiety, and anguish.
Yeah, that article I just read was from WorldNet Daily. It says, mayors in cahoots with Obama on New American Voters. I wanted to just make sure. I like to source everything. I got some good news. Want to hear some good news?
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
There's no way. There is good news.
Yes, there is. That Maryland family whose kids were walking home from the park, the 10-year-old and 6-year-old, and the cops came and took them and held them for hours in the car and then took them away from their family, and there's been 2 neglect cases put on them and stuff. Well, NBC4 says a Maryland couple who advocate free-range parenting say they've been cleared in the second of 2 neglect cases that began when their children were spotted walking alone. Danielle Meitiv, M-E-I-T-I-V, told the Washington Post on Sunday that she and her husband learned of the decision in a Child Protective Services letter June 13th. Officials haven't commented, but recently clarified their policy, noting that the state shouldn't investigate unless kids are harmed or face substantial risk of harm. The parents first came under scrutiny, of course, for allowing their 10- and 6-year-old children to walk home in Washington suburb in December. In April, the children were held for hours after they were spotted walking from a park. The park was 3/4 of a mile away. You could see their house from the park. So it wasn't like they were even out of sight. Anyhow, the children were held for hours after they were spotted walking home. And Medfed says it's a release that the couple's been cleared in both cases. So now these parents have been investigated 3 times since October, and they were not charged. So they just scoop your kids up off the street, hold them for hours, you don't know where they are, then you catch a case, your kids are taken away from you, Child Protective Services involved. So from October until last week, these people have been harassed, bullied, shamed, slammed, and they did nothing wrong. And then there's another case just like that that's coming to court next week. An 11-year-old boy gets off his school bus and walks home. Gets to the house, his parents aren't there, they're stuck in traffic. Well, the wonderful neighbor calls the cops and said that the boy has been left unattended. So the cops get there. Here's an 11-year-old kid playing in his own yard waiting for his parents to get home. They ended up taking that kid and his little brother away from the parents for 6 months. Kid's 11 years old. The parents weren't even gone an hour and a half. It was less than 90 minutes from the time that kid got off that bus until the parents arrived. The nosy neighbor, the kid obviously wasn't unattended if the neighbor was keeping an eye on it. Don't you think the neighbor should have at least said to the parent, why weren't you home or something, give them a heads up or talk to them or say something if they were that concerned? The kid was never in any danger. But now that family's facing problems too. So we better stop doing this too. If we're so used to being helicopter parents, but you do remember when you were a child, right? And these people should remember it too, these judges and child protective workers and the cops and everything else. All it takes is a minuscule of common sense. Call the parents, find out where they are. If they're stuck in traffic, what are you going to do? Just materialize them, tap the little button like on Star Trek and say make it so, and they're going to show up, teletransport or something? Give them a break. And the kid's 11. And they said, well, the kid had no bathroom facilities, but the cop whizzed in the yard. So if the kid had a pee, maybe he could have went in the yard. There was a cabana out there. There were sinks in there that he could wash his hands, and there was a refrigerator in there with bottled water and stuff. The kid didn't have a snack because he had eaten it before the cops got there. It was in his backpack. So, the kid is in no trouble. He's 11 years old. He's in his yard. And obviously the neighbor was watching him.
This is all about making everyday normal things illegal, against the law, and everybody afraid to death to do anything. Because back in my day, the police would have issued the neighbor filing a false police report and said, what is your problem? And wouldn't have done anything to that family. Unless a crime was being committed. Which it wasn't.
And what about parents that work? And there's a lot of kids all over the country that go home after school, do their homework, and play outside out front until their parents get home.
Yeah.
Not everybody can afford,
there used to be a name for those kids. Because I was one. They called us latchkey children because both of our parents worked, and we came home from school, and we 10 years old, and we took care of ourselves until our parents got home.
Yeah, and some of us took care of our little brothers and sisters.
Well, not anymore. Now you're the property of the state, and you can't even camp in your backyard anymore.
Mhm.
Your own backyard.
Yeah. And
it took
plus
a family of 5 children away because the parents went into town to get some more supplies. While their 14-year-old was looking after the family. Well, you can't do that anymore. Not in this country.
Yeah, camping. How many homeless camps are there? What are you going to bust every one of them? Now it's illegal to camp? Well, that's not going to be good for the KOA campgrounds. I know lots of people who spend their entire summer at campgrounds. I was one of them. We had one of those little travel trailers, and we put it in a camping park up in Maine. And we went up there and would spend the summer. If we could still drive home and stuff, but most of the time we spent up there in the campground, enjoying the heck out of ourselves with the campfires and the pool and the people, and it was just fun. That wasn't dangerous. It wasn't like anybody was being neglectful. We were enjoying ourselves. So, it's just all crazy. I got more good news. Today, the Supreme Court blocked warrantless searches of hotel registrations. There was this big case going on out in California. The cops would come in and demand to see the hotel registry, who was there and what time they got there and when they were supposed to head out and what car they were driving and stuff. Well, in a 5-4 decision, the justices declared that the 1899 Los Angeles law violated the Constitution by depriving hotel owners of a chance to challenge the ruling. The 116-year-old law penalizes them for declining to turn over their records without affording them any opportunity for a pre-compliance review. Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote the decision. A hotel owner who refuses to give an officer access to his or her registry can be arrested on the spot, she said. The court has held that business owners cannot reasonably be put to this kind of choice. The Los Angeles law required hotel operators to record and keep information about guests' names, addresses, vehicles, and other data for 90 days and make it available to the police without a warrant. A group of motel owners sued in 2003, charging that the law violates the Fourth Amendment's right to privacy. It took them 14 years for this to get to this. Can you imagine that? And then there were people who dissented on this, saying, well, there's hookers and there's drug dealers at hotels, and we should be able to find out who they are and where they are. Yeah, but what about the ones who aren't hookers and drug dealers? Why do you got to find out who they are? Or what their car's doing in the parking lot? What about if they're just a regular traveler or just want to spend a few nights in a hotel? It's another cop's business who you are or what you're doing there. It's no one's business who you are or what you're doing there.
It's amazing. I'd stay out until almost midnight when I was a young teenager. And, I ran into cops all the time. And they weren't my favorite people. But they never harassed me about, aren't you supposed to be home or something? It was none of their business. And usually when you had family issues, people stayed out of your business because it was your family. It was your family's business, and everybody had respect for that. Now this whole country's nothing but a rat ship where neighbors have nothing better else to do than, I can't wait. She just left to go to the store. We're going to call the police on them and see if we can get their kids taken away.
Yeah, why would you want to get someone's kids taken away, especially if the kids were in no danger, there's one thing to be concerned, but there's another thing to be a rat, and that's all I got to say about that. There's another good story, too. This is the third of the good stories, so don't get used to it. This one's from the Huffington Post. The Supreme Court thwarted a federal government's brazen raisin robbery. Now, you might think that raisins are not a big deal, but actually they might be one of the biggest deals in our agricultural situation that's come down the pike. This isn't just for raisins, trust me. This is, like I said, it's Huffington Post. It was an outrageous abuse of government power, facilitated by what Justice Elena Kagan has called the world's most outdated law. Today, in a dazzling display of judicial engagement, the court struck a blow in favor of property rights, holding that the Constitution does not allow the government to take thousands of dollars worth of raisins from hardworking farmers without paying for them. This is the facts of the case. Pursuant to a New Deal-era scheme designed to raise agricultural prices by tightly controlling the amount of agricultural products that went to market, family farmers like this guy Marvin and his wife Laura Horn of California are required to turn over a certain percentage of their raisin crop to the Federal Raisin Administrative Committee in order to maintain an orderly raisin market. If they do not, they must pay the government the dollar equivalent of that allotment plus additional fines. In 2002 and 2003, the Horns and other farmers were told to hand over 30% of their raisin crop, 89,000 tons in total. The Horns refused, arguing that they were not legally bound to do so. The government then assessed the Horns at a $480,000 fine, equivalent to the market value of the missing raisins, as well as an additional civil penalty of over $200,000 for disobeying the order. The Horns sued, arguing that the reserve requirement was forbidden by the taking clause of the Fifth Amendment, which provided that private property may not be taken for public use without just compensation. Amazingly, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, those commies, held that the Horns had not been unlawfully deprived of their property. It reasoned that the taking clause affords more protection to real property, which is land, than it does to personal property, in this case raisins. In addition, it characterized the reserve requirement as a condition imposed in exchange for a government benefit, and that benefit is the privilege of engaging in commercial activity. What? That's a privilege of engaging in commercial activity? That's not a privilege. That's a livelihood. You have a right to work. You have a right to the fruits of your labor. That is
you have
in
the
the
right
federal
to
papers.
shut the F up. That's what you have the right to do in this country. That's it. You have a right to kiss the government's backside. You have a right to allow people
privilege.
to stomp and burn the American flag.
No, you don't have a right to commerce now. It's a privilege, according to these people. Anyhow, the court said no, it's not a privilege. It is a right. You have a right to your property, and the government, if they take your property, they have to pay you for it. Now, I know it sounds, weird that it's raisins, but think about it in the bigger perspective. You have a right to your own property. The government wants to control. They want to dictate the price of raisins. So, in order to do that, they got to rob you of 89,000 tons of raisins. And then they're not going to pay you for those raisins. You spent all season growing those raisins. You paid people and yourself to go out there and pick those raisins. And then the government comes in and says, you're going to give me 89,000 tons of them or you're not going to do business, and we're going to charge you $400,000 for not doing business? What?
Let me tell you why all this stuff is happening with commerce and crops and stuff like that. I mean, you notice how McDonald's are all of a sudden losing money and shutting down more stores that they're opening for the first time in the last, bazillion decades that they've been around. I mean, do you know why?
Why?
All this is because it's going to be centralized everything. The TPP is going to pass, and they're going to control everything. Everything you eat, everything you watch, everything you wear, everything you grow, they're going to own it. And you're just going to be another, bean picker and making $4 an hour if you're lucky.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm really glad that decision come out the way it did, because what you're saying is true. But that will maybe not stop it, but it's going to slow it down a little bit. So get a little breathing room here. They can't just come out and take your produce and stuff and say it's because they want to control, they want to price gouge. So, be fair. Everybody makes the same price on the raisins, even if you grew more raisins. All right, he just mentioned store closings, Scott did, so I want to tell you something. It is getting ugly out there. 47 major retailers have already closed 6,000 stores nationwide, and it's going to be more. It's going to get worse. BuzzPo says, expect to see more storefronts closed at malls across the country. According to Liftable, would-be shoppers are maxing out their credit cards in order to pay for their skyrocketing health insurance costs under Obamacare. And, of course, race riots in cities like Baltimore have only made retailers more skittish about expanding to places like that. Throw a $15 minimum wage into the equation, and businesses simply can't afford the day-to-day cost to operate any longer. There's a chart here. They got Radio Shack, Office Depot, Dollar Trees. They're closing 340 stores. What Seal? I mean, the Gap just closed 25% of their stores. There's a whole list of them here. Friendly's, they're going out of business. Ruby Tuesdays, too. Some of the biggest names on the list include Radio Shack, Office Depot, Office Max, Dollar Tree, Family Dollar, Walgreens, Barnes & Noble, Macy's, Sears, and J.C. Penney. So this is going to be a massive amount of jobs lost. But Obama says everything's all right. But just think of how many jobs are going to be lost when they're cutting back like that. You want to take a quick... All right, I'm sure you've all heard the latest about Gruber's role in this Obamacare. He actually was the architect. He was paid $400,000. He was also part of the modeler for Romney Care, and if you hear the way he talks, I was looking up Hillary Care today, and Hillary Care depended on the stupidity of the American voters, too. And they were telling everybody that the reason Hillary Care failed was they didn't sell it right, and they weren't pulling the wool over the American people's eyes well enough to get it passed. So it never got passed. But Obamacare was actually Hillary Care. And it's the same way, the same ShamWow, the same sales job, even the same players. So, the Jonathan Gruber, he claimed that he wasn't that big of a deal, up when he got busted. But before that, all his words and everything, he was very much a big deal. He said he didn't know Obama and had never been to the White House. Well, that was a lie. He had been to the White House, and he was doing business and talking with HHS, Bob Bauer, a bunch of them. Cass Sunstein was in the mix, too. Also, they didn't have enough money for Obamacare, and they couldn't get any more money because they didn't want everybody to know that they didn't have enough money. The $1 trillion, it was $900 million, and then it was $1 trillion, then it was $2 trillion, and it still wasn't enough. They spent like $3 billion on a website that you could have probably got for $300. There was no security on this website either. They never got a security sign off, but they went on, and then of course everybody's information got stolen. But now they've been taking IRS money and putting it and using it for Obamacare too. And Congress never authorized that. They never authorized that money. But they rediverted $60 million to the state of Minnesota in just 1 month out of the IRS budget. That wasn't supposed to happen. They just decided, okay, well, we don't have any money in the OCare budget, so we're going to take it out of the IRS budget and just give it to Minnesota, because they got this new thing. Now, it's not called Obamacare. It's called the Basic Health Program. And Minnesota was the first state, and that's to go around this marketplace that the states wouldn't do, so they gave them this new incentive now. It's the same thing, but it's just got a new shiny new name. So I wanted to bring that up. All right, I'm all done with that. I've heard enough of Gruber to last me a lifetime.
That's all.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, you say, hey, we're going to pretend to give you $3 billion for making a website. You can actually keep, a couple $100,000 for doing it, and then kick up, $2.8 billion to us.
Yeah, and not only that, but they told everybody they were getting a subsidy. So, if you're one of the poor people that's working and you're depending on your tax check at the end of the year, you thought you were getting a subsidy and you were free and clear. Then you got your tax return, and they had deducted the money out of it that they had given you for the subsidy and sent you a bill that says you owe them even more. So there was no subsidy. They took it back. You got screwed. Yeah, there's no free lunch, guys. There isn't. There's no free health care. Now, the Supreme Court isn't going to show us their ruling on that until either Thursday or Monday. They withheld the Obamacare and the same-sex marriage rulings. So I'm sure that they wanted to give the White House a heads up on what the decision is before they announced it to the public, because that should have come out today, but they decided to withhold it. And like they said, either Thursday or Monday, so it won't be tomorrow or Wednesday. Now, I got more money that I want to talk about real fast. Do you know the United States aids 96% of the countries in the world? We gave financial aid to 96% of all countries, according to Forbes. According to the federal government for fiscal year 2012, they haven't shown us the last 3 years, the United States remained the world's largest bilateral donor, obligating approximately $48.4 billion, $31.2 billion in economic assistance, and $17.2 billion in military assistance. So that's 49 billion, 32 billion, and 18 billion. Imagine that. And then another 19 billion in economic assistance. And that's to 184 countries. All right. We're sending money to countries like Guatemala and El Salvador and Honduras and all over the Middle East and China and Europe and everywhere else. 96% of the countries in the world get money from the United States. So why are we sending this money out? Why are we supporting the United Nations? Not only did we give them over $100 billion every year, we still send money individually to these countries.
Because they're busting the joint out, Joanne.
Yeah.
You know,
well, we're supporting all these illegals here. The least you could do is say you have 10 people from Guatemala. Deduct from the money you're going to send them the support that it takes for their 10 people. And do that per head for every one of their illegal immigrants here.
They don't.
And then,
that's the whole,
send them the difference.
Is not to save the country. It's to destroy the country. You know, when you have Detroit that looks like a war zone in Beirut, and you don't send them any money, but you send foreign countries billions of dollars, this is the take down America time. They're busting the joint out. They've milked it dry. They've ripped everybody off, and now it's time you like to match and watch it burn to the ground.
Yeah, well, you want to talk about slavery for a second there. Who's the real slave? Every American is the slave. You're all busting your butts, working, producing, inventing, and, just doing everything, generating money. You're out there working while the rest of the world is sitting back taking the fruits of your labor. Okay, so who's the slave master?
Over now. That's over.
You're the slave.
The golden goose is dead, and now it's going to be China's turn.
Yeah, well, you're the fool out there busting your butt, supporting everybody in the world. You're the slave.
Everybody's a slave on this planet, except for the top people in government. That's a fact. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at Greece. You think they're having a good time?
No.
Think Italians are having a good time? They're out. There's hundreds of thousands of them out in the street.
Well, they're all
protesting.
dependent on Germany. They're all depending on Germany. Their single currency. The single currency screwed Europe. And that's what the Trans-Pacific Partnership is going to do to North America. Single currency is going to screw the world, actually, because we're going to world currency. All right, I want to tell you that these stories that we're doing right now, including that one about the 96 countries, are going to come together for you in a second. Here's the next in the series. Chanting death to America, Iran bans military inspections of their nukes. Okay, this is from the Times of Israel. It says the Iran MPs voted to bar military inspectors. Overwhelming decision in Parliament to keep suspect sites closed to nuke probes has yet to be approved by the Higher Guardian Council. Anyhow, they voted in Tehran. And it says that they were screaming death to America as they voted yesterday to ban access to military sites, documents, and scientists as part of that future deal with Obama over the nuclear programs. He can check out the Fordo, which is going to be shut down. But you're not going to check their military. You're not going to check how many nukes they have in their military arsenal. And you're not going to see nuclear sites. Nobody is. Britain, France, Russia, the United States, Germany, China, none of them. We're all told to kiss their ass. So what is this Iran deal? There is no Iran deal. Walk away while you still got a shred of dignity. They're not going to let you inspect anything. You give away the farm. Now, not only that, but do you know that the United States and Iran are now sharing a base in Anbar in Iraq?
Yeah.
The United States is sharing a base with Iran and Hezbollah. We're arming them.
Isn't that awesome?
We're cross-training them. We're putting our soldiers there at their mercy. Iran is running the show over there, and now they're controlling our soldiers.
Oh, and now since there's a shortage of U.S. Navy ships, Marines got to deploy on foreign ships now. Did you know that?
Yeah, well, Obama is not the commander-in-chief right now. Suleiman over in Iran is controlling our soldiers over there in Iraq.
Well, technically, he's not the commander-in-chief now, because that title used to only go with the president when Congress has declared a war. Then you become commander-in-chief. Until there's a war declared by Congress, you're not a commander-in-chief.
Well, they told us the war was over.
Completely forgot that.
Obama told us the war was over. We're not at war now. We don't even have any enemies. The Taliban, the Hezbollah, the Iranians, nobody. They're not the enemies. Just Christians and gun owners are the enemy. But all those other factions are not.
People.
And then, to top it off, the Cold
people.
War. The Cold War is back on. The United States has pledged high-end equipment for NATO Rapid Response Force. We're putting 40,000 soldiers in Europe. We're putting high-end military assets to a new NATO Rapid Response Force. U.S. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter made the announcement during a trip to Germany, where he delivered an address accusing Moscow of trying to recreate the Soviet-era sphere of influence. This is from Reuters, by the way. We do not seek a cold, let alone a hot war with Russia. We do not seek to make Russia an enemy, Carter said in an address in Berlin. But make no mistake, we will defend our allies, the rules-based international order, and the positive future it affords us all. You hear that? Rules-based international order. Russia's intervention over Ukraine has put NATO allies in Eastern Europe on edge and triggered a series of military moves by the NATO alliance, including an acceleration of exercises and the creation of a very high readiness joint task force. Moscow denies providing troops or arms to pro-Russian separatists in the eastern Ukraine, but neighboring NATO countries, especially the Baltic states of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, fear Russia could foment trouble on their territories. And it goes on, and then RT says that they plan 40,000-strong rapid response force in Eastern Europe. NATO's rapid response spearhead force in Europe might reach 40,000 troops, a tenfold growth from the initial 4,000-strong force deployed last year. So you see that? And the NATO defense minister says that he'll make a decision to further increase the strength and capability. And this decision is to be officially announced during a NATO defense ministry meeting on June 24th and 25th in Brussels. Imagine that. Brussels. Isn't that where, I don't know. The 25th. Okay, that's another one. Now keep that in mind, because now the Office of Personnel Management, you remember that they had a breach and a hacking. And then they said, oh, yeah, it was China, and China hacked them. Well, you know what? China did not hack us. They had the passwords. Office of Personnel Management, this is Business Insider. Office of Personnel Management Director Catherine Archuleta. She's the Office of Personnel Management Director. Says that our contractors in Argentina and China were given direct access to every row of data in every database when they were hired by the Office of Personnel Management to manage the personnel records of more than 14 million federal employees. So the massive breach was not a breach at all. They were hired to manage the records. They were given the password. It says that the security didn't encrypt the system, but it wouldn't have helped anyhow. So keep that in mind. We gave them the passwords. All right, now I'll tell you about this Jade Helm because it's not just in the United States; it's all over the place. They're not calling them all up. They're not calling them Operation Jade Helm 15. One's called Operation Noble Jump, Operation Saber Strike, Operation Baltop, and Operation Eagle Talon. Okay, these are naval and ground forces exercises taking place in Poland, Sweden, Germany, throughout the Baltic Sea. Then we have Saber Strike. That includes 6,000 troops from 13 countries and features the integration of U.S. close air support with partner nation ground forces and a demonstration of U.S. air deployment forces. Noble Jump is also in Poland, and that's an exercise training over 2,100 personnel. They have that new swift reaction force to deploy in 48 hours, too, that I was just telling you about. And then we have Exercise Eagle Talon, and that's part of Operation Atlantic Resolve and Operation Baltop, and that includes Polish F-16 fighter jets from Lask Air Base in Poland, U.S. airmen from Spangdamm Air Base in Germany, and the South Carolina Air National Guard in support of Operation Atlantic Resolve. So these are all exercises, Jade Helm exercises, that are going on all over the world, not just in the United States. Now, I told you about the Chinese hackers. So now I want to tell you something that's really going on. Jade Helm. You see all these exercises going on, and like I was just telling you about all over the world, they're also going on all over the country. Jade Helm just includes 7 states. But if you remember, there's exercises that went on in Montana, in Los Angeles, and Fort Lauderdale, and Boston, and New York, and all other places, all over the place. And in Hawaii, they had a mass casualty exercise, and up in Connecticut recently, they just had a mass casualty exercise. So you're wondering what these exercises are all about. There's a few reasons for them. All right, one, Scott was right. They are to have assets in place. Because, as you can see, there's a Cold War going on. We're beefing up NATO. We're holding exercises, joint exercises, with different countries all over Europe. In the United States, Jade Helm, we're also hosting foreign troops. In case anybody didn't notice the UN equipment and stuff around, well, that's involved in it. We've found that out. Now, Jade is a computer system. It's a massive, massive computer system. On this show, we've talked about a program that started out as Teledesic and then went to OCI and then became Iridium. Each phase of that program was allegedly stopped. But that's a lie. It didn't stop. What they did was they changed the DBA. That's the Doing Business As name. It involved Motorola, especially Motorola. That's important. Bill Gates. Google, Nextel, Verizon, AT&T, Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Falcon from France, you know, the Falcon rockets. They launched 288 satellites that are swarming around us now, and that was in the original system. They have built this computer system that makes the one that we are using right now, the web that we're using now, look like a dinosaur. They even have a name for it. They named it Jade. So Jade is this system. It's to collect data. Every bit of data that is on this web is already loaded into Jade. Every single exercise they are doing right now is also being loaded into Jade for future responses. Remember we told you that they are literally trying to provoke us into reaction? Well, that's true. They are. And that was part of another part of this program. It's called the Minerva Initiative. The Minerva Initiative is to collect information and feed it into Jade. The word helm means steer, or the front of the ship. So you got this steering this massive deep web computer system called Jade. And it's not something that's like sitting on a hard drive somewhere. It is so advanced now that this thing can build itself. Every now and then they'll show you on television of some rocket with a secret payload being launched. Well, that's part of this program. That's why they're trying to give away the Internet for free, by the way. You know, they want everybody to have Internet because they want everybody under their control. They want to know who you are, what you're doing, who you're talking to. If a situation arises, say this thing in South Carolina, they want to know how we're going to react to it. And they're marking every single thing we do and keeping an eye on it.
I'm not sure what the computer, they call the computer. It's a quantum computer, but the Jade 2 software is just an application on that computer.
Right.
It's not the entire system.
No, you're right. That's Jade Helm. It's the steering. That's what Jade does. It steers it. They call it Deep Web. It says it's a primer. What is Deep Web? The Deep Web is a computer concept. It's essentially two categories of data. The first is basically any information that's not easy to obtain through standard searching, which could be like Twitter or Facebook posts and things like that, links buried many layers down. The second category is the larger of the two, and it represents a vast repository of information that's not accessible to standard search engines. It's comprised of content found in websites, databases, and other sources. Often it's only accessible to a custom query directed at individual websites, which cannot be accomplished by simply surface webbing. You have to have the right access to get into this system. And like he said, it's only a part of it. Quantum is, it's building itself. Now,
well, this application and this system is artificial intelligence that is self-aware. I mean, it's basically a artificial brain with the computing power of a demigod, if you can even comprehend that,
Yeah.
Because it's huge, and they have everything on everybody on the planet, pretty much. They know who your friends are. They know what you eat, what TV you watch, what things you have in your house, what you do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they could pretty much even pinpoint where you're going to be at a certain time, at a certain hour, at a certain day.
Yep. Yep. And they call it an invisible web because, well, it implies that you'll never see it, but it's actually a deep web. The information is there. You just have to have the right technology to find it. And it does. He's right. It works on algorithms and things like that. So if, so everything's going smooth and then something pops out at them, it'll set off an algorithm. And then that'll take them to another database and they'll be able to figure it out. Now, this, as it goes along, is being expanded and expanded and expanded. And it's not just a United States thing. It's global. It's part of the world order, if you want to call it that. The international order is what they prefer. Now, we found this article about a Chinese missile. Now, if they can reach the space station, right, they got us thinking, oh, yeah, we don't want China to get any long-range missiles, and we don't want Russia to get any long-range missiles. That is so ridiculous, because if they can reach the space station, they can reach you. All right, this article is from the Investor's Business Daily, and it says that China had tested a new intercontinental ballistic missile that can deliver up to 10 independently targeted nuclear warheads. So it's like any other rocket. They light off this rocket from its point of origin, and it goes a certain distance, and when it runs out of juice, 10 more rockets come out of it and begin their own journey. So they can reach you. It's the same as a rocket booster for a space shuttle launch, things like that. So, that they're flipping us out about this missile test when it's already been around. Not only has it already been around, and China's had it right along, it was built by the company Iridium. And when Bill Clinton was president, he gave the technology to China. Because part of doing business with China, you have to give up the intellectual property too. So Clinton handed over all the technology for these rockets. China doesn't build things, they steal things. And this technology was not even stolen, it was given to them by Bill Clinton as part of our smart, reset or whatever he called it, smart business with China. Anything with the word smart in it, be careful of. Smart meter, smart phone, smart television. Don't trust it.
Yeah, that's
There's
all
nothing...
data collecting information. That's all data collecting technology. It goes right up to that mainframe. And that J2 software is basically a command center which takes the place of a general. They don't even need generals anymore. They will tell the computer will tell the grunts what to do, and it's hooked into the drones, and very shortly it's going to be hooked into robots. They're not even going to need human beings anymore. They've already got robotic animals that can run 70 and 80 miles an hour, and these things are beasts, and they're operational right now. This isn't science fiction.
Yeah, it isn't science fiction. So, as far as Jade Helm, yes, these are exercises. Yes, they are designed to act as a response to uprisings inside the United States, not overseas. They said that that was a lie right from the beginning. They said that all these exercises was for foreign wars. Well, why are they training our cops then? The cops are not going to foreign wars. The cops are staying right here. So that right there, that's a lie.
Well, I wouldn't be worrying about China and missiles because a destroyed country that nothing can grow on for 1,000 years is worthless and it's useless to anyone.
Yeah,
if
but
anything,
that's not. They're not going to destroy us.
They'll be dumping some pandemic on us, or it's like a neutron thing to where it just kills the people and leaves the property intact.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They're telling us that China's going to be our enemy and Russia's going to be our enemy. That's a bunch of hooey. They're not our enemy. They're our partners. They're our partners in this. They're our partners in the space station. They're our partners in this deep web computer system. They've been our partners since 1993. So what you're seeing about this buildup and everything is probably population control, because they're really not mad at each other. They're all involved in this program. We're hitching rides to the space station from the Russians, but we're going to fight the Russians too. And we're making these deals with Iran. But we're at a base with Iran. We share a base with Iran.
We have been moving our entire industry over to China for the last 10, 15 years at least.
And they know that the American people are not going to take this lightly. And they know that we are going to uprise. And you will notice when these exercises are over, all that equipment they brought in for the exercise, they never take it back out with them. It stays in place. So this is a buildup. If we do get in a fight with China and Russia, everything is in place. Now, with these recent events, like all these sharks coming close to shore, or the thousands and thousands of red crabs washing up in California, and the purple slugs that are washing up in California, why are these animals coming out of the sea? What's going on that's forcing them out?
Well, you know what I think?
Is there subs? What's going on out there?
I think Fukushima radiation has killed off a lot of the sharks' natural food supply, and so they have to go elsewhere.
That's a possibility, but that doesn't explain the Atlantic coast. That does explain the Pacific coast. But I'm thinking, all right, the other day there was a 6-point-something earthquake in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that the United States Geological Society did not record on their public board, although it was recorded by other geological systems. Why didn't we tell everybody about that? Was it actually a test of some sort of an ordinance? And
because
of course,
the Confederate flag more important. Because Rachel, what's her face, thinking she's a black woman is more important. That's why.
Yeah, everything's more important, guys. We're in trouble. September 25th is that UN meeting, and we're supposed to switch over to a basket of currency. The U.S. dollar is not going to be the reserve currency, but it will be a basket of currencies with the Chinese renminbi up on top. You know that the BRICS Bank is overshadowing the IMF. You know that Janet Yellen told us all to kiss her ass, that she wasn't getting off any information until some DOJ investigation was over. So she's not telling us what's going on. You know, Greece is in trouble, and everybody's blaming the Greeks and stuff. Yeah, okay, blame the Greeks. But also, you might want to blame that single currency, too. And Germany's about had it. So then you got Putin rushing in. Putin's going to fight off missiles and stuff, and he's fighting with Europe, but he's going to run down and he's going to help Greece, right? None of this makes sense unless this is a major move to globalization. Obama's got 18 months left. What's his next job? He hasn't bought a home, or if he has...
Repeal the Second Amendment?
Yeah.
You mean his job when he gets out of here in 4 years? Because I don't think he's leaving.
He's got 18 months left, or I'm starting to fight
I don't
myself.
think he's leaving. Okay?
No, he'll just go to the U.S.
Because these two dweebs that are running for 2016 don't even act like they're running, so...
Well,
I don't
Hillary,
know.
she's acting like she's taking a dive. She's got more luggage than Samsonite. So
and Jeb Bush.
I don't know who was even vote for her. She's got what's his name, Sanders from Vermont. He's nipping at her heels, and he's drawing huge crowds. You know, that's a serious problem. That's a serious problem when we have a vowed socialist who is surging.
He looks like a mad scientist dropped some acid at a bar mitzvah. I mean, he's got no chance.
Yeah, what is it with the left and all these aging commies anyhow? They're Karl Marx fans. He was an aging white guy. Sanders, an aging white guy. Hillary, an aging white girl. I mean, all old people that are all
I've been telling you.
Old communists. Obama, he's a young communist.
I've been telling you.
But he's full-blown communist. Valerie Jarrett.
O'Malley.
But O'Malley, he's another one. You know, even by default. He's another one.
Right.
We're surrounded with communists and socialists. Is this the United States? I mean, we used to have anti-American...
It isn't. It isn't the United States. United Socialist States of America. You got one party. That's it. You got three people in D.C. that actually isn't bribed or blackmailed. And those are the ones that voted no for John Boehner to be Speaker of the House.
Yeah, and then over the weekend, Ron Paul himself came out and gave a whole big speech on video about the state of the economy, and this next president, if there is one, is going to inherit a depression, not even a recession. Well, he's expecting us to be in full-blown depression soon. So, let's see, I got one more story we got to talk about here, and this is mandatory service. We've talked about the kids being recruited into Job Corps and AmeriCorps and all of that stuff. Well, now these statists want mandatory year of service for every American, every young American, every one of these kids. Listen to the story from Zero Hedge. Was a racket. It always has been. It is possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious. It's the only one international in scope. It's the only one in which profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. A racket is best described, I believe, as something that is not what it seems to the majority of the people. Only a small inside group knows what it's all about. It is conducted for the benefit of the very few at the expense of the very many. Out of war, a few people make huge fortunes. Well, this was one of the most important articles I'll write all year, he says. The statists are coming for your kids, and the conditioning has already begun. Last night I came across one of the most horrifying articles I've ever read, which is saying a lot. Before I get into it, take a look at the title and the tagline. If you think the title's bad, wait until you read the article. It says, what becomes evident is this grotesque concept of forced national service is being actively discussed at the highest levels of government. What Ron Fournier is doing in his National Journal article is conditioning the public to accept something that is completely unacceptable. You know, Ron Fournier, he's a senior political columnist and editorial director of the National Journal. And prior to joining National Journal, he worked at the Associated Press for 30 years. Anyhow, the guy covered Bill Clinton in Arkansas, moved to the District of Columbia after Clinton was elected president, and now he wants to convince you to subject your innocent children into mandatory service to a nation provably run by corrupt criminals and oligarchs. It sure is some twisted notion of shared sacrifice when those who had nothing to do with the disastrous choices made by the oligarchy are the ones who have to suffer the consequences. Now, take this piece of Nazi-esque propaganda apart piece by piece from the National Journal. I know a better way to fight ISIS. It starts with an idea that should appeal the better angels of both hawks and doves. National service for all 18 to 28-year-olds. Require virtually every young American, the civic-minded millennial generation, to complete a year of service through programs such as Teach for America, that's D-Ray's program, AmeriCorps, we know all about them, the Peace Corps, or the U.S. military, and two things will happen. First of all, he confidently proclaims that this scheme will appeal to both hawks and doves. Based on what evidence? Let me provide some evidence against his argument based on a recent Rasmussen poll that 45% of U.S. voters concerned governments will use military training exercises for power grab. It also says, so the American public has no confidence in government, but somehow they're going to gladly line up to serve the corrupt oligarchy. Of course not, which is why people like Ron Fournier want to make it mandatory. All right, now back to the piece. Virtually every American family will become intimately invested in the nation's biggest challenges, including poverty, education, income inequality, and America's place in world affairs. It sounds like a whole leftist agenda, huh? And number two, military recruiting will rise to meet the threats posed by ISIS and other terrorist networks, giving more people skin in a very dangerous game. Well, it might seem like a radical plan until you compare it with two alternatives, the status quo, which clearly isn't working, or a military draft, which might be the boldest and fairest way to wage a long war against Islamic extremists. Notice how he only offers a couple options. So you got a choice. You can either join them or you can join them. Okay? So there's your choice. Then this is how they operate. You know, they only offer you status choices, kind of like being forced to choose between a Clinton and a Bush for president, right?
Yeah.
You know, and if you think it's some merely hack journalist, Fournier makes it clear that this is being discussed at the highest levels of government. He says he spoke about the concept with retired General Stanley McChrystal, who commanded forces in Afghanistan and Iraq. You know, if this president or his successor gets serious about ISIS, McChrystal said the effort would require an international coalition and more U.S. troops. Even if we didn't need a draft to drum up the required troops, McChrystal said, I would argue we need a draft because it forces national commitment. So here they go. They want to mandate national service. They want to tell you it's Teach for America and AmeriCorps and Job Corps and all of those corps, whatever they got. Like I said, D-Ray came out of Teach for America. Those are just radicals, you know, spewing all this commie crap in the classroom. Well, now they want to take all your kids. We talked about Job Corps. We talked AmeriCorps. We told you that Holder was recruiting all those illegal kids, those unaccompanied minors, into AmeriCorps to give them structure, of course, for the children. So you see what's going on here? We just lined it up for you. Race and gender. That's the hook, okay? Give up everything American. Destroy cities. Destroy your heritage. Destroy your history. Destroy your education. Destroy your family. Destroy your economy. Destroy your housing. Destroy your industry. Then, these computer systems, they're marking everything you do. We're going global in September with the global currency, with the global order, with the NATO buildup, with the UN edicts, with sharing a base with Iran and Hezbollah. Do you know how much risk our soldiers are in right now? How much trouble they're in?
I'm glad I don't have a kid in the Army. That's all.
The Iranians will turn their guns. The Iranians and Hezbollah will turn their guns on Americans just as quick as ISIS will. And now they're using our bases.
They'll give them blanks. They'll give all the Americans blanks, you know. I wouldn't want to offend anybody.
and these intercontinental ballistic missiles and the buildup in Europe, they're going to start a massive war. They're going to demand every one of us get in on it. They're going to kill off a lot of people. You notice the guy from the Vatican even said we have 6 billion too many people.
Yeah, they've been discussing it for decades.
Yeah.
And now it's down to the wire, so now they got to start doing it.
Obamacare is going to kill off a lot. You never hear them saying anything about, like, the 27 shootings Thursday night that happened while that was in Charlotte was going on. There were 27 shootings in Chicago at the same time that happened in South Carolina. But South Carolina had a Confederate flag, so that's way more important than anything. All right? They're not
and they've already, put the gun control on Chicago, so can't get any more milk out of that.
Yeah, well, what about Detroit, and what about New York, and what about Boston? And, I mean, there's dead people all over the place. Chicago especially, man. I don't know what the hell's going on in Chicago, but I doubt they got any people left there. They just keep killing them off 20 at a time. Things are bad. Things are bad.
Yeah, and all the super rich people in America and Israel are all leaving. They're going to Brazil. They're bunkering in. They know what's going down. They don't want to be anywhere around it.
No. And then all we're talking about is some whack job who's actually a con artist who put on blackface and a poodle hairdo and decided she was black. And then a guy who put on a dress and decided he was female. And we're going to be talking about gay marriage soon, and that's been played to death. Race, gender, and guns. Race, gender, and guns. And every time you change the subject, they change it right back. For 7 years we've been dealing with this. I mean, how much more can we talk about race? All right? Your race is your race. You didn't choose it. You got what you got. We're talking about stuff that happened 200 years ago. Can we get up to the here and now soon?
This shows how much power they have. When you own everything, you own the media, you own all the politicians, you're the one who makes the news, you're the one who sets the agenda, and it doesn't matter what the people say or think.
And
we don't know what
today. And on top of all that, the most important story today was raisins.
Yeah.
And actually, that's true. The most important story today was raisins. You get to keep your raisins. You don't have to give it to the government.
You got a governor of California who is shutting off the water supply to agriculture and farmers that pretty much supply the entire country with food, and saying it's because of 6 or 9 fish or whatever. Dumping water into the ocean. It was just blatant, in your face
destruction,
tyranny, and everything, and nothing happens, nothing changes, nobody does anything.
Well, that's what we got to change. We have to figure out what it is we're going to do to respond to this, because otherwise this isn't going to get any better. This is going to get worse. They're going to take down that Confederate flag. All right, big deal. They're going to take it down. And everybody's probably saying, yeah, take it down. It's long past time. But think about that. What's the next thing they're going to demand from you? They demanded gay marriage. They got it. They demanded that we accept transgenders. They got it. They demanded that we take down this flag. They got it. They demanded no racism. They got it. Nothing is enough. If you keep capitulating to bullies, that just empowers them. The only thing to stop a bully is to be a bigger bully. Give it back to them. All right? Well, I'm tired of getting slapped around.
All you can do is resist and do the opposite of what they tell you to do, even if it means going to jail.
Yeah, well, even jail. Obama's still the biggest prison break. 60,000 illegals.
I think every Yankee in America should start flying the Confederate flag. Just out of spite.
No, we're going to have to pick a different symbol because that one's already burnt out. But the idea behind what you're saying is right. But I'll tell you what, I guarantee you they're coming after the crosses on Arlington Cemetery. I already heard talk about that. They say that the Statue of Liberty is offensive to Muslims. The American flag is offensive to Mexicans. A cross anywhere is offensive to an atheist. So you keep giving in, and you're not going to have anything left. You have already given up your food. You're giving up trans fat. You can't even have a potato chip in 3 years.
The people
that,
aren't giving
right?
up anything.
This
is the government imposing this on the people without their consent or anything.
They shoved Obamacare down your throat without your consent.
Yeah, and everybody tried to do something about it. They melted the phones. They were in D.C. protesting, doing everything legal. And how good did that work out?
Yeah, well, we used to be the big, tough Americans, and we were arrogant, and we were brave. Well, I don't know how brave we are now. I ain't seen a whole lot of bravery lately. Got any closing comments for our guests?
No, I don't.
Had enough of my stuff, huh? Had enough of my crap today. Now I got you completely flipped out. All right, well, thank you, Scott. Say goodnight, everybody.
All right, good night, everybody.
All right, thank you very much, Scott. All right, guys, that's all the time we have for today. I hope I didn't piss you off too bad. We hope you enjoyed our show. To everybody who's listening or called in or who was in our chat room, I want to thank you so much. A special thank you, as always, to my wonderful colleagues, Lynn, Anna, AstroTurf, and a very special thank you to my cool co-host, Scott. Stay tuned to PRN Radio Network all week at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for our great lineup of fantastic shows. You got to listen in tomorrow night at 8 o'clock to Uncommon Knowledge with Denise and Bobby, because she has been working harder than a one-legged river dancer on a lot of investigations that she's going to be breaking tomorrow. So on that note, good night, America. We love you. Moretti Underground out.